Janyre Tromp is a developmental editor by day and a writer by night. And all that happens from her kitchen table when she's not hanging out with her husband, two kids, two troublesome kitties, and slightly eccentric Shetland sheepdog. Janyre writes historical novels with a healthy dose of suspense, but her passion is writing about the beauty of the world, past and present, even when it isn't pretty. Janyre, good morning. Thanks for being here with us.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to hang out with you.
This is going to be such a fun interview. I have loved your books. I've loved getting to know you in person. So I was wondering if you could start just by telling us how you got started writing and how you got into editing.
So I have a very strange story of how I got into writing, honestly. I did not grow up with the dream of being a writer, which I think is a little unusual for writers. I was a voracious reader. I read every second of every day. I read under my covers with a flashlight. That was my big rebellion, My mom totally knew about and totally let me get away with, which I find hilarious. Um, I actually started college as a chemistry major. I was going to be a medical researcher, and everybody's like, editing, writing, and science have like nothing in common. They do. They have so much in common, and it's the curiosity part of it that I love in both. But anyways, I started as a chemistry major, and about um, most of the way through, three-quarters of the way through my freshman year in college, I was like, this is not going to work for the rest of my life. I don't want to do this. What am I going to do? And I called my mom. If I tell this story kind of often because it shows very much my personality. I called my mom. I'm in tears. I was 17 at the time and thought I knew everything in the world because
Of
all
course.
17-year-olds do. And I called my mom and I'm in tears. What am I going to do? And she says, well, why don't you just do what you love for a little bit? And I, in that 17-year-old wisdom, said to my mother, and I quote, nobody gets paid to read, Mom. The great irony of the world is I get paid to read.
Yes.
It's my job. And so I graduated with an English writing degree because I knew I didn't want to teach. And then I actually almost had a second degree, a dual major with PR and marketing. And so that's how I entered the publishing world, is on the marketing side of things. So I actually ran a marketing department for a while and was freelancing for the editorial team, doing acquisitions, which I loved. And our managing editor at the time said, you should try writing a book. And I was like, okay, because it's just that easy. And I did. And then I took like a 10-year break because I had kids and I could only edit or write. I couldn't do both. And so I was editing through that time. And then my husband and I were talking one night and he was really frustrated with his job. And I jokingly said, well, I'll just write a bestseller and then you can quit your job. And he was like, haha, but no, seriously, you should write because you're really good at it. And so I started writing what became, the next one, Darkness Calls the Tiger. I finished that book probably about 8 years ago.
Oh,
And then it
wow.
sat because nobody wanted to do World War II Pacific at the time. So then I wrote what became Shadows in the Mind's Eye. And that was the one that sold first. And then my publisher said, we want to do another World War II book. But I had moved on to Vietnam era because they told me nobody wanted World War II books.
Right.
And so the only book I had was this World War II Burma book. And so I was like, you can have it if you want it, kind of. And they were like, okay, I guess. Well, in the meantime, Tosca Lee published Long March Home. There's a compilation with Susan Meisner and Ariel Lawhon that was Pacific War setting. Elise Hooper did a Pacific War setting. And so all of a sudden there's this groundswell of interest in the Asian theaters for the war. And so it's been really fun to see the kind of, from my perspective, unexpected interest in this China, Burma, India theater that nobody's heard of before. And just the stories that are there. And it's been a very interesting, I could not have mapped this journey myself. I could not have said, this is the way it's going to go. And it's been really fun.
That's so interesting because I think when we think of Pacific theater, World War II stories, we think of Pearl Harbor and not much beyond that, honestly. But my grandfather served in the Pacific theater all over. So I'm really excited to kind of look up some of the places that he went and then read Darkness Calls the Tiger and see if any of those places intersect. But it's so important that we get a bigger picture of what happened and not just those same locations that we talk about over and over. Pearl Harbor, France, we talk about those all the time, but there is so much more.
Yeah, and it's an interesting set of places because they aren't places that we're familiar with just in our general like vocabulary. Like a lot of people are like, where is Burma anyway? And and when I say it, that's what Burma was called Burma until I think the late 80s, and it's called Myanmar now, which more people have heard of Myanmar, but it's wedged between China and India. So it's in that little strip there next to Thailand, and Vietnam is in there, which obviously more people have heard of as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of interesting stories that happened in that area. And there's a lot of politics that happened after the war that closed that area. And I think that's why a lot of the stories didn't come out.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to study.
I'm sure. And I'm just even thinking now how little we know about it. But like my grandfather, when he served, he was so excited when he joined the Navy and he wrote his mom a letter and said, they gave me socks. And that was his first pair of socks. And so to think about young men like that going overseas and to these countries and these places that they had never heard of and never could have even imagined existing, it just really kind of helps you think about what they went through, the extreme emotions and feelings and thoughts they must have had. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you digging into this different side of the war. It's going to be really fun to experience it through your eyes and through the eyes of what we can imagine these men went through back when they didn't even know these places existed.
Yep, exactly. So
Well, can you tell us a little bit about what a developmental editor does?
sure. So a developmental editor, there's kind of like different buckets for different types of editing that a book goes through. And most readers don't realize that when they read a book, it is not what the author turned in. There's typically at least 3 levels of edits after an author turns in a book, and usually more than that. But the first round of edits is called a developmental or a substantive edit. And I never call it a substantive edit because I can't say it.
No.
Right? But basically, you take the whole book and make sure it works. And whatever that means. And so I actually do both nonfiction and fiction. And so in the fiction world, that means, does the plot hang together? Does the character arc work? Are there missing pieces, plot holes, gaps in even though I say argument, which is weird to talk about in terms of a fiction book. But think of it like theme. So if you're asking a big question, so like Darkness Calls the Tiger is really about that battle between forgiveness and revenge. And so if there's gaps in that argument throughout the arc, that's a problem. So my job is to go in and smooth all of that out, make sure there's no political oopses, if we can say it that way. Things that the author might say that they don't realize how it means to somebody else. Any permissions issues, because a lot of our, especially contemporary authors, like to quote music. And the problem with that is you can't quote lines from a song without paying for those lines. So you can say the title, but copyright law doesn't allow you to actually quote
Good to know.
Music. So things like that that most people don't know, but it's
Mm-mm.
my job to know all that really big picture, things that can really get us in trouble,
Right.
and then work with the author to rewrite and fix those. So I really do get paid to read. It's kind of a fantastic, it's kind of a
Yes.
fantastic thing. But it's a very necessary part
Oh,
of the book publishing process.
very, very cool. I know there's so many different types of editors and it can get confusing. So thank you for explaining that part. You've told us a little bit about Darkness Calls the Tiger, but what inspired that story? What brought it to your mind?
So I was looking for a World War II story that people hadn't heard of. And so as my pattern is, I went to my mom to ask for my mom's wisdom, as we've already established. My mom knows, and I do not. And so I went to my mom and we were talking and brainstorming. And she said, I think this friend of a friend of a friend, I don't know how many of a friends there were, but like a couple generations there, I think they were in the war in India. And me being me, I have learned since, y'all. Me being me, I said to my mom yet again, Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. The war wasn't in India. And of course, my mother proved me wrong. There's an entire theater of war that involved India, and it's fascinating. And there's so much history there. And so, as I started digging in, I'm finding these enormous stories that have never been told. There are so many. There's the flying tigers out of China, who were Americans who went to China to fly over and help protect the soldiers in Burma and India. There's sapphire mines, so there were businessmen in the mountains, all these things. And then I stumbled across the story of this family who were missionaries that were up in the mountains of Burma, and how their kids, their sons, their older sons, were involved in the war effort and rescuing downed pilots that were flying. They called it the hump, the Himalayan mountains, which is very, 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 very dangerous. And they were flying out of India trying to supply China with food and ammunition. And so these guys would go down and there was nobody to go save them. So these boys were going through the mountains and saving the downed airmen. And I was like, wait, there's missionaries up there? What in the world was that all about? So I started digging into that. And then I hit this point where I realized I ran across this guy. His name was Father James Stewart, and he was a missionary from Ireland, of all random places. And he loved the people, and he was generous and kind. And he stood in the street leading up to the villages in front of a contingent of Imperial Japanese soldiers and talked them out of attacking these kitchen villages.
Wow.
And he did it successfully multiple times, and multiple times he wasn't able to save the villages. And I just thought, if all these missionaries are up there and you have these kids watching this, what happens to them? What happens
Yeah.
to your faith? What happens to who you are as a person? Where's your hope when you see everything destroyed? And so that's where Kylan, my main character, came from. And as I was processing through it, I'm doing more research because I'm a research nerd. I'm a history nerd through and through. And I discovered this legend that all of the mountain people, so there's a bunch of different ethnicities up through the mountains, from India across Burma into China. And every single one of them has, well, for the most part, every single one of them has a legend about tiger people who either turn from people into tigers, or tigers turning into people, or people taking on the persona of a tiger, kind of like a
Wow.
berserker type of thing. And I thought,
There
that's
you
my,
go.
and I mean, when you see the cover, that tiger is my main character. And so she becomes very, very angry at what has happened and what God has allowed, and decides that she's going to take revenge. And then you have the foil, of course, the person that is helps pull her back in was another missionary, and his name is Ryan. And Ryan is kind of patterned after Father James Stewart. Funny, kind of a lovable guy, smart, but you wouldn't look at him and go, oh, he's a scholar, they are. And he becomes this person that is kind of the stable line for Kylan. And you see them working through, because he's questioning too. I mean, you don't walk through something like that and be like,
No.
okay, it sounds good, and la-di-da, here we go. And he wrestles with it just in a different way and from a different perspective. And you see the two of them working through it together throughout the whole book. And there's my favorite part of the book is when Kylan recognizes Ryan's struggle and hands hope back to him. And so my books are dark. They deal with real issues and real struggles that we can all identify with.
That's why I love them.
I can definitely identify with, I don't want to forgive that person.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hurt in my life. And I never take a Pollyanna view that, we'll just snap our fingers and it'll be okay. We'll pray it away. We'll,
Right.
gratitude helps, but it's a process. It doesn't, not a magic wand. But there's always hope at the end of my books. I always want to find the light in the darkness, because it is always there. That's real life. That even in the darkest places, there is always a spark of hope, and there's always a spark of light. And so even though darkness calls the tiger out of Kylan, there is light at the end.
I love that. I love that so much. Can you tell us what you're working on next?
I am not contracted for
Okay.
another at this point. And I actually, everybody's career is so very different. I am in the very fortunate place of having a couple of books that are sitting. So one I'd finished editing earlier this winter, and that is my 1960s, and it has to do with the deinstitutionalization of the mental institutions,
Wow.
specifically one that is in northern Michigan. And it's about a woman, her sister, it's about a woman who's released, but it's also her sister who's accused of murder. And it's one of the two women, and you're not sure who. And then the one I just finished a rough draft of one that is from 1976 to 1979. And I don't even know how yet. I don't have my arms around that one enough to really give a really succinct description of it. And that's normal, y'all. It's I can summarize 100,000 words in a sentence.
Right.
That doesn't happen easily. So it is takes place in half of it is in Cairo, Egypt, and half of
Ooh,
it is in New Orleans, Louisiana. So
very interesting.
are lots of connections. And that's one of the things I love about history is that as I write, I find these little pieces that I had no idea connected, and the story connects them. And it's just I'll give you a quick example. So this story that I'm writing in New Orleans, that New Orleans part, I'm researching, trying to figure out how things are going to happen, because I have a basic idea of what's going to happen. And there was true story, a hurricane that came through New Orleans, which is, as we all know, fairly rare.
Yeah.
It actually came through and hit New Orleans in the time frame that my book is set in real life. And I was like,
Oh.
praise Jesus, we're going. So just crazy, cool, weird stuff like that ends up changing the trajectory of the book.
Yes. I love it. What is it? The saying that says truth is stranger than fiction? Yes. So very true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to enter our lightning round of questions, although it's never lightning fast because we are writers, we are authors, we have lots of words, and that's totally fine. So my first question is, what is your favorite genre to read?
I'm a mood reader, so I'm a very eclectic reader. So I would say I'm going to cheat and not actually pick a genre, but I love world building. So anything that's got a really cool, unusual world built into it.
That's fair. I like it. Do you have any favorite authors?
That is like picking my favorite child.
I know it's so hard.
How about the book that I'm currently reading right now that I really like?
Sure.
So I actually brought it downstairs with me. It is this book. It's I Cheerfully Refuse by Leif Enger. And Leif Enger wrote years ago a book called Peace Like a River that I really, 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 really liked. And then he had a bunch of books that were like, that was okay. This one I love. Again, I'm like, yes, I think I might like this one better than Peace Like a River. So highly recommend that one, especially to my writer friends. If you are a writer who reads like a writer, um, he just has this way with words. He like says phrases and metaphors and comparisons that are just like so yummy. So there.
Adding it to my list right now. What is your favorite way to spend a quiet evening?
What is a quiet evening for
I
me?
understand that too. If you
Um,
had a quiet evening, how would you spend it?
Um, I by trade, I do a lot of reading. And so by the end of the day, I am cooked. I can't look at a screen. I don't want to do anything. So I love to take walks. I will sit outside. Sometimes I will listen to a book at night, but I'm old. My eyes hurt by the end of the day. And so it's hard for me to read right now at night, and that is okay.
Yeah.
Um, because it's where I am at the moment. Sometimes I'll watch like a good television show or something, but I'm a police procedurals, like for whatever reason, I love police procedurals because I love reading mysteries too. So sometimes I'll watch some random TV show that's a police procedural. Not like what is that? What's the one that's really freaky? The Special Victims Unit. I can't watch that one.
Oh
But
yeah. None of those. My daughter and I enjoy watching like The Rookie. It's
yeah,
police, but it's like cheesy and it's fun and it's okay that it's not even close to being accurate. It's entertaining, you know?
I can turn my brain off a little bit and just like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm good for half a sec.
Yeah, my husband was a police officer, so he has to leave the room because it just annoys him, but that's fine. We are entertained.
And the funny thing is that because I've done enough research, I know that it's horribly inaccurate, but
Oh,
I'm
yes.
okay,
It's still
so.
entertaining. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a neither. I am what I call a puzzler. And so I don't know, you could kind of tell when I was talking about how the book that I just finished, how it's coming together. So I typically have a basic question, a historical fact, and like a character that I'm building. So I start with kind of those three things. And I have a loose outline-ish. So it's kind of like, a fuzzy picture on a puzzle box. And then I start putting it in the frame. You know how you do a puzzle, you do the outside of the
Uh-huh.
puzzle. And then I start, as I'm doing my character development and really digging in, they start telling me stories that I have no idea where they're going to go, if they're
Yes.
even going to go in the puzzle. And so I start like getting these little blocks of color all around that I'm just like sticking in the middle of the frame because who knows what's going to happen. And then I use my really loose outline to start putting those pieces, those blocks of color into place, and then writing connective tissue. Um, and then in the end, I might have pieces that I don't need over here. Then I save those for promotion because they work very
Ooh.
well. Deleted scenes and fun little tidbits. But it's very rare for me to lose a lot because I still have a basic structure that I'm looking for my characters to tell me stories about.
I love that. I am such a word picture person, and that was an amazing description. I love that. Very, it's like you've talked about this before.
Yes. And actually, Jamie Jo Wright is a friend of mine, and she does something similar, and she calls it the Skeletor.
Yes.
She builds the skeleton and then starts putting the meat and the muscles and the tendons and the skin on.
Mhm.
We have a very similar style of writing.
Yes, I did a collaboration like this with her, I think 2 weeks ago, and she was explaining that to me as well. So very fun. I love it. The next question is if you could spend a day as a character in any book, doesn't have to be one of your books, but any character, who would it be?
I am very partial to Lucy Pensieve in Lion, Loach in the Wardrobe.
You are not the first person to say that either. What a
I'm sure
fun
not.
character.
Mhm.
Yes, that would be a great to be able to hug Aslan and all of it.
Yep,
Be amazing.
yep.
Good
Mhm.
choice. What was your favorite toy as a child?
Okay, books.
Yes.
And then also any water. We actually had a pool growing up. And so I was 100% a water rat. I was always in the water. I love swimming. I haven't been able to do much of it in recent years, but yeah, um, fun stories. I passed it on to my daughter, so she was a swimmer too. So yeah,
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
Do you prefer coffee or tea?
Yes.
Okay.
It depends on my mood. I'm a mood reader. I almost said a mood drinker, and that could be
Yeah.
taken. But like
Yeah,
I
that's
drink
fair.
both. Yeah.
Completely fair.
Mhm.
What is one goal that you have not reached yet?
I am horrible at setting goals. Can I just um I I have actually in the last couple of years knocked quite a few off. I need to sit down and make good goals for myself. But I'm also, as a writer, I'm very careful not to make goals that I cannot myself affect.
Yes.
I tend to make goals like I'm going to befriend 5 new writers and help them this year. Those tend to be my goals, that type of a thing. Would I love to be a New York Times bestseller? Uh-huh. But if I make that my goal, it's highly unlikely. And so then I'm striving for something that is
Of
I can't
course.
I
That's a
can't
dream, not a goal.
Yes. Thank
Yes.
you.
You're
That's a
welcome.
perfect way to say that. I love that, Heather. Yes,
And
it's a dream, not a goal. So my
and I'm
goals are
raising my hand to be one of your 5 should you make that goal.
there. Yeah. And I love helping other authors. That's one of the things that I really love doing. And I'm a very gifted. Can I say that? Does that sound like right?
No, that's your gifting from God. Absolutely.
I'm a very gifted coach for new authors, and I really enjoy doing that. It's one of the things that I love. Just seeing the light bulbs go on and seeing them go do amazing things. It's really fun.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. Do you like to do anything else that's crafty or creative?
Yes, I'm all over the board. I actually this morning went and got flowers for 4 different families, like one including mine. But I will go plant other people's
Oh,
flowers. And I love gardening in that way. A little less lately, just because the time and effort it takes.
I'm sure.
But my daughter is a fine artist. She's a very good painter. So I picked back up paintbrushes. Actually, for Shadows in the Mind's Eye, one of the things that we did for promotions is we made postcards that have my watercolors of scenes on them.
Um,
So I do stuff like that. And so I am always and forever sticking my toe into new creative endeavors and then moving on to something different.
Nothing wrong with that at all. I understand. I'm the same way. Do you prefer an e-reader or a physical book?
This was so hard for me. I actually prefer audiobooks right now. So I'm
Okay.
gonna go option C, but I almost said option 3, which is weird. Option C with audiobooks, just because they are in a format that I can do other things too at the same time.
Yes.
As we've noted, I don't have a lot of extraneous time because I have a day a writer and I'm a mom and a wife. And what I do is I will listen to a book, and then like if I'm a quarter of the way through and I'm really loving it, I will buy the physical copy and then I mark it. So that's what I'm doing with I cheerfully refuse. So you probably can't see yeah, you can see all my dog
Yes.
ears, and I just have to go back. I haven't done these because I didn't have my book with me when I was listening to that section. So I'll go back and dog ear and underline those parts so that I can go back and have the physical copy of it, but then I can actually read it. Because I can't, yeah, it's hard for me to make the space and time to sit and read a book, which is
Completely
unfortunate.
understand.
Yeah.
It's a season.
It is a season. 100%.
What is your favorite historical era to write about, or do you have one?
Ah, you're killing me, Smalls. I'm equivocating on everything, Heather.
It's okay.
Um, it's funny because it was World War II for a very long time. And I am falling in love with the Vietnam era because I was kind of forced there and I was kind of begrudgingly went there. So my first couple stories, I was like, about and now I'm finding a lot of really interesting things I didn't know. It's harder to write though, because it's in living memory. And what I mean by that is if I mess something up in World War II, there might be one person that will read it that will know that I messed it up.
Right.
When you write Vietnam era, there's a lot of people out there that have
Yes.
that memory that are going to be like, that didn't happen. And that, which somebody already found an error in darkness calls the tiger. I will say
Aw.
that. And it makes me laugh. I'm never like about it. I'm like, yep, you found the research error because they're
Congratulations.
congratulations, you are my research extraordinaire. Yeah, so I am Vietnam is growing on me. But there's like I have occasionally like other stories that call to me from other eras. We'll see if I ever am allowed to read those or not. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
But
it
right
seems
now I
like
love in Vietnam.
you have to earn your keep in one era for a while before you're moving on. You can move on to others.
Interesting, depending on who your audience is. Because like for me, all of my books have to do with high conflict time periods, and war and the results of war. And so people go with me on those. And I haven't had a lot of trouble with people being like, I thought you were World War II. Why is your novella Vietnam? And like even the deinstitutionalization of the mental institutions, that time frame was when all of the laws were changing for race, although the racial conflict was happening during that time frame, and women's rights and all of that, they were all moving through at the same time, and the rights for mental patients were moving through. So it was like this whole group of laws that radically changed the shape of our laws in this country for the better, for the most part. And I say the most part because the mental institution ones were not handled very well. It was good how that they needed to happen, but it wasn't handled well. And so people are going with me because of that just really high conflict concept. So I'm getting away with it at the moment.
Good. Keep going. Keep going. Do you have any nicknames?
Do you know my name? My name is very hard to say when you look at my name. By the way, it's Jan and then ear,
Oh.
or Jen and then air. My mom says Janyre and my dad says Janyre. So I answer to both and I don't hear a difference. So I don't care. So what that does is means that I pick up a lot of really interesting nicknames that way. Answer to anything close to those. But like I have a really good friend that calls me Janyre because that's kind of how it looks,
Oh yeah.
you know. And I have a couple people that call me by my last name, Trump. My maiden name was Stockinger, so I had some people that would call me Stock. Really answer to, but they didn't care. Yeah, so I pick up names like that, but then, you know, like my kids have weird nicknames for me too, but that's not like a broader, yeah.
All right. How do you pick the names for your characters?
Um, oh, I have to be careful. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes my character names mean something. Like they have a meaning behind them. Tylin was specifically chosen for the shortening of Kai because that is something that the Kachin people would be familiar with. And by the way, in Asian cultures, and you'll see it in the book too, in Asian cultures, the last name comes first and then the first name. So she's Moran Kai to the mountain people. And then, but a lot of times my character names are chosen for their ethnicity, and then meaning.
Very cool.
So sometimes if you look up the name of a character, you will find a little bit about who they are. So in the book that I'm writing, that I just finished, my main character's name is Nora, and her name means light. And there's reason for that.
I
um,
like it.
her sister is Esther, which is star. Um, yeah, so there's reason for the way that I put my characters together. I do a lot of character work in my books. I do a lot of I do a lot of work just in general on everything. So my characters have a lot of depth to them. My world building, I treat it as a whole other character. And then of course all the historical research. So
I love that. How do you do all your research? This is not one of the questions, but now
yeah.
I'm intrigued. Do
Mhm.
you do all your research before you start writing, or do you do it as you write, or?
A little bit of both. So I do a lot before I start, because a lot of times the story is affected by the real history of what
Yeah.
happened. And so I will do a lot of research up front, but then I'll run into things that I'm curious about. And sometimes it's rabbit trail. So again, the book that I'm working on right now, I read an entire first person narrative of a guy, like, so his memoir for the backstory of my main character's dad.
That's intense.
But her father had a lot of influence on who she became. And where they were raised was very unusual. And this first person account happened in that location. So I was looking for location detail as well as who her father would be, because that would affect her. Because her dad worked for the person that I read the memoir of. So it's an interesting, and it changed how I approached certain topics with my main character. And I don't think there's anything like specific that comes
Oh, you're frozen.
with, and I'm such a nerd.
I feel like I should be
Oh,
taking
I'm
notes
not
for all
frozen
of this.
anymore. I'm frozen.
Yeah, you were frozen for just a second, but we're good.
Sorry.
Technology. My next question is, what was your first concert?
So, along with I'm just a nerd. I'm a well-rounded nerd. I was a musician growing up, and so it was a symphony. I don't remember specifically which one, but I loved going to the symphony. I still do. So,
Same.
yeah.
What is your dream destination to just sit and write?
So I am a lake girl, water, love water. And I'm very fortunate. I live in Michigan. And if you don't know anything about Michigan, we have the best beaches in the world. I will fight you for it. Rand agrees with me. There is no place better than the coast of Michigan, Lake Michigan, during the summer. During the winter, it's a little cold. In the summer, it's amazing. And so just a beach house up overlooking Lake Michigan would be fantastic. So,
Sounds perfect.
yeah.
Is there a book coming out soon that you're excited to read?
Um, so I was excited to read I Cheerfully Refuse. I have not like gotten my head up out of the sand enough to really think too much about. I really like Kate Quinn, who has a book coming, who not everybody in your audience is gonna love. I always tell people I'm very eclectic.
Yeah.
Read reviews. I recommend before you go read it. So I'm excited to read that one. I actually just purchased, when it first came out, Jamie Jo's book, and I haven't had a chance to write it because releasing a book and also trying to finish a book at the same time take a lot of same. So
Absolutely.
cute. And so I'm excited to read that one. There's so many that are good that are coming
Yes.
that, one that I've read that I would really highly recommend that is releasing, I think the week after mine. I think it releases May 21. There's two. One is Janine Roche has one that is a Route 66.
Yes, I saw that. Looks amazing.
Looks so good. I'm super excited to read that one. And then this one I've read is called Love Overboard, and it's by Shannon Dunlap.
I want to do her book cover collaboration. It's so cute.
And she is so much fun. So this book, you guys, it's like, I'm really, really serious. This one is not. It is these older women who found out that it was less expensive to live on a cruise ship than to go into a retirement village, which is true facts, which is very sad
Yes.
to me. But anyway, so they're living on this cruise ship, and there's this group of elderly women who end up being matchmakers for all of the people who work on the ship. And it's just mayhem. And it's so much fun. And it's hilarious and like heartwarming and endearing. And so I highly recommend that one too. If you don't like the super serious all the time. I do
Need a
that.
break.
Brain breaks. And that's why I'm an eclectic reader, because I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
in the mood for a mystery. I'm in the mood for a rom-com. And so Shannon's isn't a rom-com, but there's a lot of romance in it because they're matchmaking. So it's kind of
Yes.
a fun, different vibey going on there. So
It seems like a lot of fun. It's on my list as well. For you, what's the most difficult part of the writing process?
ooh, part of it is finding the time. It is an emotional drain
Yeah.
from the get-go. So there isn't any one point that's more difficult. I think there's times in each stage, the writing, the editing, the pitching, the marketing, the releasing. There's times in all of that that are hard. And then you just bring it all together, and can be very emotionally draining. Especially when you write high emotion books.
Yes. Yes,
Because I put
absolutely.
myself in the place of the character. And so I'm going through all of the things that they're going through too.
Yes.
So I think that is the hardest thing, is trying to be healthy in how I handle that emotional drain. Um, yeah, I think that's the hardest part.
All right. Very last question. What do you love most about being an author?
People. So I'm one of those extroverted introverts who I love hanging out with people, and then I go home and crash. But
Same.
really do. I love meeting new people. I love talking to people. I will Zoom in for book clubs and bookstores, and I get to speak. I'm speaking at some libraries in Michigan this fall. And so I love people's stories. I like sitting and listening to them tell me about all of the things that are going on in their brains. Um, and so I love that aspect of being an author, because it brings me into contact with so many people that I would never otherwise get to meet.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, we did it. We got through those questions. Can you tell our viewers and readers where they can learn more about you?
So I jokingly say, if you could spell my name, you can find me. So in theory, it's down in the corner over there. So my website is www.janyretromp.com, and Janyre Tromp is my handle on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, and wherever you are. If I'm not there yet, you can tell me. No, I can't handle anymore. Come find me everywhere else. And I hang out a lot on Instagram, especially. We talked about being artists and doing all the things. I'm a photographer too. So I love playing with photos and seeing pretty pictures. Makes me happy. So I hang out there a lot. But if you go to my website, there is a novella that you can download for free there in response to signing up for my newsletter. Yeah, so
Perfect. Great. Well, hopefully our viewers and readers will head there immediately and sign up so they can read that novella. And today we're talking about Darkness Calls the Tiger. So could you hold up the book again one more time?
What?
Okay, this cover is amazing and it's so unique and so different from most covers. So when I saw it, I knew I wanted to do jewelry. And then when I started making the jewelry, I thought, that looks amazing on a book cover. I'm not sure who would want to wear it like that though. So it became two sets of jewelry. So the first one is like your background. It's a little more elegant. It's translucent, so it should be pretty fun to wear. And then the second one is a little funkier. You have your tiger stripes. So whoever wins our giveaway will get both sets of jewelry. And they can also go to your website and get your novella. So look at that. Win, win, win.
Yep. And actually, the winner, I have a second novella that I will send. It's an ebook that I will send to them, and it's called Lovely Life, and it is an homage to White Christmas. So,
Ooh, nice. So everyone needs to go to your social media and follow you. Go to mine and follow me on either Instagram and or Facebook. And then they need to see our giveaway post, like it, and comment done. That's all they have to do. How easy is that?
love that.
Super easy. And this will go live on Monday morning, and then Wednesday night we'll pick a winner. So they can sign up for your novella, my novella. They can sign up to win another novella, jewelry. I mean, it's like Christmas in May.
This all year round with us, man.
Yes, absolutely. Janyre, it was so nice to talk with you this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on, Heather. It was a pleasure.